evening, everybody. I've seen a lot of familiar faces here, a few people I don't know by name, but I am going to, when I go through these pictures, we're going to be talking about buildings for the most part on Main Street. And I'm going to ask for some memories of what you recall about these buildings if you grew up in this area. How many people grew up in the area and have been here for many, many years? Okay, so a few. So some of you have not, clearly. So some of the stories we may tell of where Wilson's department store was will only be probably funny to a few folks who have been here forever in the day. But a lot of things have changed along Main Street here, and I'm also going to talk about, I think it's three other buildings that aren't on the Main Street proper here that are buildings that if you haven't been here or are not aware of them, you ought to go take a look at these buildings because they're very interesting. Tom asked me if my background was architecture. It's not, and so looking at that, one would think I'm probably going to be talking about all the finer architectural points of all of these buildings and the beautiful cupolas and the Victorian age art. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But it's really not an architectural tour as much as recognition of just how unique this downtown is, because it does have quite a variety of architectural styles down there. And a number of the buildings have been refurbished in recent years, and the ones that have look really super. I mean, they look really nice. They get a nice coat of paint on them. But if you think about back in the day when these things were being built, there was a lot of creativity that went into putting that Main Street together and all the architectural styles that you see there. So we're going to be talking about the buildings along Main Street for the most part. We're going to go up one side of Main Street, come down the other. We're going to start down at the library. I'm going to come up that side of the street right up to about up here. I'm going to come across the street to the Universalist Church, and then we're going to go back down the sidewalk on this side. Okay, that's the kind of the order. And so as you recognize these buildings, that's the sequence that we're going to follow here. So, without further ado here. All right, so everything starts with this granddaddy of bonfires. 1894 fire was a big one. It got a lot of buildings here. It was interesting because it got a lot of buildings on just one side of Main Street, for the most part. And so a lot of the architectural designs and the age of the buildings, at least on that further side of Main Street, start in 1894. Okay? And if you read about that 1894 fire, it was a big deal. I mean, they were bringing firefighting trucks up from Portland on the railway. That's how serious it was. And I don't recall having read about this, just how long it lasted, but it was apparently very intense, very heavy winds carried the fire down Main Street. It started up here where C.D. Cummings was, C.D. Cummings factory, which is no longer there for those of you who are not from here, over where the Medical Arts Building. The Medical Arts Building, there was a factory there. It was a factory there for 140 years. And in 1894, something happened over there. Fire started, heavy winds, summertime, and the fire carried down the further side of Main Street, got a lot of buildings, and it went down about as far as where Stevens Hospital is right now. That's how far it went. That's where the effects were felt. So the first building we're going to start with is the library. And I've actually got notes that go along with this that appear in the, but I'm going to leave it on the picture here, and I'll just read from the notes here. As some of you may know, Maud Thompson Camerling was someone who gave a gift of money in memory of her parents. And I'm going to ask, for those of you who've been here, for people who do have some inside knowledge, if you can add to anything that I say or do, please correct me if I say something, if I misspeak. I'll tell you, when I was reading a lot of the newspaper clippings and a lot of the books, there was sometimes conflicting information in these brochures that were put together, kind of talking about what you can do up and down Main Street here. So sometimes there was conflicting information, so I kind of steered clear of some of the conflicting information. Also some good juicy gossipy stuff. I didn't really want to get into that.
Yes, yes, that is right.
I got a couple of little tidbits in here, but I didn't really know how accurate all that stuff was too. But Maud Camerling was very instrumental in getting that library built. What a beautiful library that is. You know, I don't think there's any library in this town this size any prettier than that one. It is a Georgian, here's the architecture. It's a Georgian revival, I believe. Anybody correct me on that? Is that any architects in here? Yeah, anybody with architecture background? Yeah, oh good. I can say that. I can say just about anything here. The Library Association had its roots in 1885. Does that sound about right? And the library, prior to the library that we know now, was above Longley's hardware store. And so when this library opened in 1938, there were a whole bunch of volunteers that moved all of the books that were on the second floor of the Longley building into the library. So there was never a missed day of library service. So I guess they worked through the night to move all the books down there. And then there was a pretty substantial addition that was put on that library. Remember what year that was?
2001.
Yeah, early 2000s. Very substantial addition. Has anybody not been in the library down there? If you haven't, boy, I really encourage you to go in there. It's just it's a lovely asset for the town here. Okay, so we're going to come up that side of Main Street. And we're going to skip one building. You know, there's a white building down there, and I did have some information on that. I had some good juicy stuff on that. Because apparently the person who lived there was supposedly the mistress of Diamond Jim Brady. Maybe that's true, maybe not, I don't know. We're going to skip up to what now is, and has been for many years, Dow's Law Office. And that was the Dr. Augustus French house. It was built in 1894, right after the fire, because what was there was ruined, it was gone. And that was designed by somebody named William B. Coffin, Sturgis Associates out of Boston. Now there was a lot of work that was done up here when the town was rebuilt. I mean, there's some pretty prestigious architects and designers came up here. So it leads one to believe that the town might have been a place of some means to be able to afford people like that, because those people would not have been cheap back in 1894, especially for a town like this. The French house is a masterful Victorian age woodworking example. And if you really look at it, if you go down and take a look at it, I walked by it yesterday morning. God, was it hot yesterday? I walked up and down Main Street taking pictures at like 9 o'clock, and by the time I got to the advertiser office, I'm soaking wet, just sweating. I mean, it was hot. And I did happen to have a chance. I talked just briefly with David Dow. He happened to be coming into the building there as I was walking by, so we had a nice chit chat about the building. And I've got two pictures here. If you stand right about here, you look back down along the length of that building, and it's really quite a substantially sized building. And it was one of the largest buildings that was built after the Great Fire. And so I'm assuming that is the footprint of the building as it existed when it was rebuilt. And of course, a lot of these buildings have been refaced and have had work done to them. But this one is pretty true to what it originally looked like, aside from the facing, the painting, and whatnot. And Dow's Law Office has been here for many, many years, multiple generations. All right. John B. Hazen, as it turns out, was the architect builder of this particular place, and Hazen designed a number of places here in town. And there's actually a Hazen Avenue, it's off Beale Street, which I assume must be for the same family. The next house up, very similar looking to Dow's Law Office. And this was the Dr. Frank Barker House and Office, also built in 1894 because what was there was burned. This has great architectural, Queen Anne architectural. I mean, anybody that knows the Queen Anne style here, kind of embellished, turrets and windows and archways, and the big tower on the right here was added after the building was built. So that was added somewhere between 1895 and 1901. So the house was built, and then that big tower was put on later. That's an apartment building now, I believe.
Yes.
All right, this is the Tucker block. And this is where 290 Main Street restaurant is, very popular restaurant. And the parking lot right next to them is also part of that establishment as well. This is pretty interesting because Benjamin Tucker, and anybody who's been in this area knows the Tucker family goes deep into its past with Benjamins.
Yes.
And the name is carried through over the generations. Benjamin Tucker was the town's first harness maker, and he was a brigadier saddler, which must have been a position, an officer, in the Civil War. And the first Tucker harness shop on the site, on this site right here, was burned in 1860. It was rebuilt, and the second shop burned in 1894. So I don't imagine Goodman's Insurance would have wanted to carry the fire insurance. The harness business that the Tuckers started finally closed in 1958. So the business started before it was on this site, and the business lasted for 150 years. Wow. The harness business for that family, over 4 generations.
It was down in the basement. I mean, a big part of it was down in the basement.
One thing I want to do, do people remember what this was used for over the years?
Vinnie's.
Yeah.
Vinnie Ashton's.
Vinnie Ashton's,
Yeah,
yeah.
the records in it, the record shop.
Yep, there was an electronic shop there.
And print shop.
Print shop, Grassroots Graphics was in there for a few years. How far back? Anybody go back before Ashton's was there?
I remember going in there with my grandfather
Yep.
to get harnesses for the snowshoes.
Harnesses, okay, yeah.
When he was
So
in
that would have been
business, yeah.
1958 or earlier, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was
The
a
Tucker
kid
store.
then, I used to like to go in there.
So, Carol, were you saying with the China shop was in the bottom?
Yeah, you could go downstairs, and it was sort of like going downstairs at Longwood's, where
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff got done. And I remember my mother being aghast that my father took me there because it was no place for a young girl. But I went back again. It smelled good. Yeah, that leather just smelled fabulous.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Smell of leather, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, something really unique about that.
Yeah, so it was sort of a Sunday morning stop.
Yep. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Go to the dump, go to Tucker.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. All right, so if we go from that building, one building up, we come to what is called in the history books the Savings Bank Block. Built in 1894 again. And this was the first building built in town specifically to be a bank. It looks pretty solid. It looks like a bank. It looks like a bank, doesn't it? This was designed by somebody named George Cummings out of Lewiston. And he was fairly famous, at least in the state of Maine. I can't tell you other buildings he designed, but it was noted that he became one of the leading architects in Maine. So again, the fact that they were bringing people in from out, really professional people from outside, probably spoke to some of the prosperity that might have existed here. Norway Savings Bank. Norway Savings Bank was here. It stayed at this site until 1950, when they built their current building, and they've enlarged that substantially since. But the Norway Savings Bank was in there, and then they moved across the street in 1950. And this place now is a law firm.
There's one upstairs.
One upstairs.
Downstairs is vacant.
Downstairs is vacant.
Bruce Herbst.
Yep. And remember what was in here? Did anybody remember the insurance?
David
David
Plain.
Plain,
Yeah.
David Plain Agency was here for many years.
My dad did a remodel on that for Cummings, and he had this, one of the safes that was in
Oh,
the
cool.
original vein.
Oh, that's cool.
One of the what?
Safes.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
That's something you probably don't want to move very often.
No, I don't think I'm ever gonna move it.
Use it as an end table.
It's pretty big.
There was a dentist office on the second floor.
Ah, who was it? Remember the dentist?
Was Dr. Easton? No.
He then, father and son, his home is up on Pikes Hill Road.
Was it Greenleaf?
What did you say?
Greenleaf?
No, not Green.
Was it Easton? Was it
Really comes down by
Dr.
the
Easton?
school.
Or he went to Dr. Hayden?
No, not
He
Hayden.
was like Stones.
I just can't bring up the name, but
Yeah, yeah.
he joked that his assets were over $1 million. Good, that he's over the wall.
Yeah, Norway savings assets have improved dramatically since they moved over here. Holy cow. All right, the next one up is the big building here. This was the Noyce block. There's been a lot of stuff in this one. And the, who remembers what was in here? Drugstore, yeah. The soda fountain there?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the soda fountain we'll talk about down at Stone's Drugstore further down. All right, the Noyce block, this was also 1894 because this burned. And what's interesting here is the people who owned this in 1894 when it burned owned the Hathaway House across Oak Avenue. And this burned, but they took a bunch of rugs and took them down and kept the Hathaway House intact so it didn't burn. So it was about the only building on that side of the street that did not burn during the fire. This was built by A. Oscar Noyce, and it was built specifically to be a drugstore. So that's how far back it goes. It also housed the post office, and I think back in that day, the indication was that there were apartments up above, so there was commercial stuff down on the bottom, on the street level, and apartments up top. And it's had a number, and recently, for those of you not here, recently it's had a number of commercial establishments there in the last 20, 30 years.
So what did those business signs say?
Well, this is, there was a music shop here. I think that's a music shop. And this was Cattails. Remember Cattails was a card, sundries, wrapping paper. And I think they had another location as well.
Rumford, I think.
Rumford?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
There's a loan store on the left side at one time, I remember.
Yep.
And Cattails, was that called Bartash too at one time? Is that
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Bartash right here, yeah.
Yes.
So I wonder if they were the same,
I think it was all.
Yeah.
kind of sold a similar kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was double. It was double.
You could go in.
It was a double store, yeah.
Even when
Yeah.
Ashland said it, I think they had both. The middle and the right.
I remember going in and buying wrapping paper and cards and stuff. This place. Okay, further down. This is the Denison Hathaway House. And as I understand it, correct me, Sue, if I'm wrong, this is not the Denison that you're the Denisons of.
Yes, it most certainly is, and Lynn Hoffelder.
I'm sorry?
Lynn Hoffelder and I share a common ancestor,
Oh, really?
but it wasn't her great-great-great-grandfather or my great-grandfather who built that house. It was the third Denison brother who was here.
Ah.
There were three brothers here, mine, Lynn's, and that guy.
Oh, I see. So there is a family connection.
Yes, there is, yes.
That's cool. This was a building that probably, it said probably in one of the books that I looked at, designed by Grange and West. Grange and West did a couple of other buildings here in town. Let's see, hang on a second here, I'm sorry. Yeah, originally owned, this was originally owned by Isaac Dennison. Does that sound familiar? Isaac, yeah. He was an early merchant of Norway and the owner of Dennison's drugstore, which was that Noise block that burned, the building we looked at just before this where Bartash's was. The home was later owned by Charles Hathaway, and Hathaway was a wealthy businessman who operated a sash, door, and blind factory. So there's some money there, certainly. The 1894 fire damaged the house, but Hathaway repaired it, and he added the tower. In repairing it after the fire. And there is a story of them grabbing carpets and wetting them down and throwing them on the side of the building to prevent the sparks and the ashes that were flying up from the Noise block right next door on the other side of Oak Avenue from burning the house down. So that's probably what saved the house. Yeah.
And is this the place that has a secret room in it?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
And this right now, what's its use now?
Well, it's a residence, and some smaller apartments.
Apartments on top. Yeah, I was out there taking pictures, and probably the owner was doing some gardening. We probably wondered what I was doing. I was standing far enough away. I was going to go, but it's just too hot. Probably pretty ugly, probably, if I went over and told him I was taking pictures of his house, I could talk about it. All right, so I'm going to, let's see, we're going to skip the Newberry building where the savings bank is, and we're coming up to the Crane Block. And this for many, many years was a clothing store.
Before that was purchased.
Yeah. This was occupied by sisters from 1885 to 1901. And the sisters sold this to someone named Zeb and Marguerite Merchant, which is the name Merchant is there in that name of the building. And they sold dry goods on the first floor, and they lived on the second floor. And into the 1970s, it housed Crane's Ladies Furnishings. Furnishings, ladies furnishings. Yeah, I'm sorry, in the 1970s it was furnishings. And then later operated as Margot's Fashions, and that's what you see here. But the Crane Block is still very prominently displayed at the top there. It's got some really, if you look at it, it's got some really neat architecture and neat embellishments in the design.
And if you go upstairs, because upstairs now is apartments, but there are still transoms over the doors and still the tin ceilings.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great building.
Yeah.
I was in there one time, and, well, many times actually. The nylons were all under glass.
Oh,
You
wow.
couldn't pick them up
So
silver.
nice.
And then when you paid for things,
So nice
they
in there,
put the
wasn't
money, they put the money in the tube and sent it up above.
Yeah, that's right. It was an elegant store. I thought, as being a young person going in there, it was
Well,
just.
for Norway, Maine. for sure,
Yeah, right. It's just like, you felt like you were somebody.
There was a person that took the money, sat up on,
I
raised up high.
Yeah.
Does anybody remember the Cranes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They lived upstairs too before they
Yeah.
bought the Lions house on Packard.
Yeah. Yeah. Robin, what was the wife's name?
Marge.
Marge. Robin Marge. Yeah.
Duncan. Duncan Cranes.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Duncan Crane's parents, which is two Billy's husbands.
Yeah, if you live here, for those of you who are, if you live here long enough, you'd like to know.
Oh, God. I think I finally got it.
Okay, good. I don't want to sign it. I'm in trouble.
All right, then we're gonna come up one more building. I've got two pictures here. One is the Oddfellows building as it looks now. And clearly, there's been a lot of work done to that. Locally, as you know, there's a lot of work, money has been put into that. I'm not sure where that stands on development. I think there have been some issues.
Yeah, it was all good to go. until-
Yeah, legal like this.
It came up.
Yeah, some legal issues and whatnot, but this is in yesteryear times, and there was the retail stuff down at the bottom.
What was pets? Was that?
I remember the pet.
Well, I think it was,
That was after Wilson's.
After Wilson's,
somebody did
yeah.
a pet store.
I remember I got how many goldfish I bought there, because my goldfish never lived very long. And they could always go and buy new goldfish there. They had fish there, and other
Oh, so
little
it was a pet
parakeets.
store.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
Where the bakery was,
This was actually originally, 1894, the first floor was built right after the fire. And then the second floor and the third floors were added later. Second floor was put in 1911. And originally it was constructed as home of the Independent Order of Oddfellows, Norway Lodge number 16. Does anybody know what
Few
Oddfellows
pop-ups
do?
there.
Anybody an Oddfellow? Anybody an odd fellow?
My father was.
I looked it up because I didn't know what they did. And, it's a fraternal order that does charity work, good deeds. Yeah.
I think Bert Stearns' office was up.
Yes. Tom Smiley's Fancy Goods store was the first tenant. And then the Ben Franklin store in the 1930s, the Wilson Dollar store in the 1950s. The upper two stories in 1911 housed the district courtroom and law offices, and the Oddfellows had their gatherings up on the third floor.
At one time, it was Wilson's on one side and the First National Grocery Store was on the other
Yes,
side.
that's right, that's right.
Yeah, there was.
Yes.
Overshawn was in there?
Yep, they
Yep.
were for a short time, yeah.
So if you think about how many grocery stores, there were times in the past where there
Yes.
were multiple, there were like
Yes.
5 or 6 grocery stores up and down Main Street here. Probably specializing in meat or fruit, or Lorenzo's down there was fruit primarily, and Jackson's right here was meat. And so there were a lot of grocery stores along Main Street.
Yep.
All right, here's the granddaddy. The Opera House. The Opera House, 1894. There was a similar sized building here that burned in 1894. And it was a very large building like this one, except it was wood, obviously. This was designed by somebody called E.E. Lewis from Gardner, Maine, who also designed the Oddfellows block that we just looked at. So the same designer did both, so you can see they're similar, obviously. The grand ballroom on the second floor, we're talking about that. Grand ballroom on the second floor. Who's had an activity up in the grand ballroom on the second floor? I remember that. There's a stage up there. It used to be a real center of community life.
Girls basketball played on the second floor.
It was a rec center when I was a kid. You use it as a rec center for young kids to get off the street and just gather up and do stuff. They had dances. They probably had town meetings up there. They had all sorts of activities going on up there.
Best Plains musical performance.
Yes.
It was a movie theater later on.
There was
Yep,
a movie
yep.
theater up there, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, the list is long as to what it was used for. Yeah, it was used as a movie theater up until the mid-1970s, according to my notes. So,
It was even more later than that, or more recent
was it?
than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 80s, I
I'm sorry, probably I'm reading something.
Country music on Saturday nights up there.
Yeah.
And they had a heating system that banged terrible or whatever was
Yeah.
going on up there.
Yeah. Yeah, and for a number of years, for people not from around here, the building fell into real disrepair. And all the shops, everybody remembers the shops down, there was nothing there. I mean, it was really in a bad way, but a lot of the industry closed down in the area. And it's great to see all those shops on the first floor. And nothing short of a few $1 million if anybody wants to donate to get it up and running and functioning, because you know, it's obviously it's a building that's gonna require a lot of tender loving care to get it back to full use.
Well, they have gotten a big grant, right? Yes.
Yeah.
We were just talking about that as to where that was at. I'm not sure, just, you know, what the next step is gonna be. Anybody on the building, on that committee there? No.
Ann Summers just wrote, said, part of it's, they've already got, so they.
Oh, good.
Oh, wow.
So there'll be some activities. It'd be great to see the rest of that building being used. And I remember that town clock. I lived on Beale Street, and I could hear the bells going off. There's just something very comforting and soothing about that, when that would go off and on the hour, in the middle of the night. Okay, we continue up the street, and we come to this little tinny. Now that doesn't, I know because I was over there the other day, that doesn't any longer have the Woodman's sign on it. I think that's been pulled down. The poor thing, the building, if you look inside, is all fallen in on itself. But this was actually built, this was Woodman's, it was built as part of the Opera House block. And it originally served as a single horse fire barn. Given that in 1894, the town had burned down, and so they thought it would behoove the town to have a fire response right next door to the mill that burned the place down to begin with. And probably was a smart call. This was a hunting and fishing store established in 1936 by the Stone family, who owned Stone's drugstore. I'm going to get to that in just a second. And eventually it was sold to Heman Woodman, hence the name Woodman's. I bought my first pair of skis there. They were wood. I promptly broke them. The no-car ski area right over here.
Yeah.
My parents bought them, yes. Yeah.
You
Parents
could
bought me my
also,
first.
you could buy one cross-country ski if you broke it.
Oh,
You
really?
didn't have to buy a pair.
Yep. That's cool. That's cool.
Not because I broke one.
What was cool about it is when it was Woodman's, there were two big rooms, and one was under the Opera House stairs in the Opera House building itself.
Because I do remember you had to go down the stairs. Was it? Yeah, there were shoes and things out there, right there. Yeah, shoes and boots. They sold guns. They sold fishing gear. They sold ski
Sold
gear.
model airplanes, all kinds of model airplanes.
Did they?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the shopping skates, ice skates.
Ah, yeah.
Yes.
So the worms.
Yeah. The worms. Yeah. You can see the worm sign right here.
Carcasses on the cars.
And then Heman Woodman eventually sold the store to Lloyd Mason. And Lloyd Mason had been in the banking industry and he ran that and owned it for a number of years. And I guess it closed.
There's another owner, and then
Was there another?
moved it across the street.
Paul Brooks, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yep.
Paul Brooks bought that. And they moved across the street where Dolce Vita is. Okay, but the poor thing, Woodman's is now, the roof is caved in and it's just, there's nothing left of
I
it.
wonder if that sign is still around.
I don't know, but it's somebody took it down because it's not there.
Well, I remember-
Vivian Acres carved that sign.
He moved it.
Yes, Vivian Acres carved that sign. Thank you for mentioning that because that was in my notes. Vivian Acres, famous local artist, actually carved that sign.
Pretty sure it went across the street.
And he designed the log facade in the front as well. Okay, moving up the street, we get to what we call the Stone Drugstore building. And this was built in, that's right here. This actually survived the Great Fire, so this was another building along that side of the street that didn't manage to survive the fire. Fire probably, it went downwind from them.
That's the first building on that side of the street that
Yep,
survived.
yep.
Everything packed,
Yep.
coming this way.
Because the wind was blowing that way and blowing with a fury, I guess, so that did survive. It was constructed with a meeting hall on the upper floor. And the storefront housed Samuel Lafayette Crockett's drugstore, 1891. So that was a drugstore way back in 1891. Franklin Pierce Stone, you guys weren't very creative with their names, were you? Franklin Pierce Stone's drugstore followed in 1889. And the Stone's Rexall drugstore sign remained on the store until the 1970s, or maybe later. And I remember going in here, and they had a soda fountain in here too.
Yes, they did.
I remember having cherry Cokes. And you could get a hot fudge sundae in there too with the counter in there. It was a really small, little tiny
Dr.
place.
Hayden, the dentist, had a, I think on the second floor,
Yeah.
he went from the side.
Yep. And then I went up there a few years ago with my daughter, and we did hot yoga. Hot yoga. I thought yesterday was hot. Try doing yoga when it's hot. I spent more time taking a towel and sucking up the water that was pouring off me than I did any kind of stretching moves and whatnot. They ran a yoga studio up there on the second floor.
Yeah.
Can you take money for that?
Sounds right. So that's interesting. So that's everything above here survived.
Yes.
Everything going south was down. Boy, I bet they were throwing water on the side of the building to keep that fire from spreading. All right, here's the advertiser block. Got two buildings there, actually. And this is pretty early. This was constructed in 1848 as two separate buildings. And eventually they were joined together. 1887, the Grange bought and rebuilt some of the structure, and the Masonic Lodge met on the third floor. Norway Savings Bank spent some time on the first floor, and the Great Bank Robbery of 1867 happened right there. $4,000 was stolen. Great Bank Robbery of Norway, Maine. Yep. 1867, right there. And there was a carpenter shop in here as well, so a number of things took place in here. And then the advertiser eventually bought that. And the advertiser also bought what is going to be called the Evans Cummings house. We'll talk about it in just a second. The gingerbread house, which was just on the other side of this. Anybody deliver advertisers? Yeah. I was there for quite a number of years.
My bicycle.
My bicycle, yeah.
Don't walk.
Yeah.
Oh, you walk?
I walked. I wasn't coordinated enough to ride a bicycle. All right, here's the gingerbread house. I put that in here because we're going to talk about the Western Maine Arts Center here as well. But this building, for those of you who may not know, was located down right behind the advertiser building. Right behind the advertiser building, right over here. And it was moved. And this has got an interesting history because aside from its fancy architecture, it was constructed in 1855 by a guy named Richard Evans. Richard Evans was famous because he developed a repeating rifle that never got picked up by the government, but it had a fairly revolutionary design as to how the bullets were fed into the breech. And so, if you look it up on Wikipedia, where everybody goes to look up history stuff, it's a pretty interesting article about this gun because it was a very unique and very revolutionary design. So Evans builds the place. Eventually, C.B. Cummings of the woodworking of C.B. Cummings's, he became the owner and he extensively remodeled in 1885. And the building, when it existed over here, was actually turned so the long axis was 90 degrees to the main street. And it was famous for its gardens. It had beautiful gardens, apparently. And clearly had some very fancy, embellished architecture as well, so it was really quite the attraction back in this day. C.B. Cummings ended up adding the elaborate millwork and decorative design and the turret. The turret he added later. And of course, there's been some recent development of that, having just been purchased in a private ownership. And anybody know when do they hope to, I mean, they got a lot of work to do inside. Outside has been beautifully remodeled, but inside, a lot of work to do.
They pretty much removed all the plaster at this point, so that being the first step.
Yep. And their hope, what's the ultimate end use?
Well, I think the one who bought it wants to make an apartment for her mother, and then a couple of other apartments, and then maybe an Airbnb. Over there.
Yeah, yeah. Nice to see that in use again. Okay. There's lots of stuff that we wrote about that. That's just all gingerbread task force stuff. Okay, so here's the little building out here, the Western Maine Art Group. This was a school. It's a grammar school. So you can correct me if I get any points wrong here on the school stuff, because I know you've been researching that. But built in 1866, and it was known as the Upper Primary School for many, many years. Acquired in 1968 by local artists who formed the Western Maine Art Group. And it was one of the first schools here in the village, wasn't it?
That was the first school in the village, not the first school in the town.
But right here in the village.
Yes.
It was built specifically for kids here in the village.
Yeah, but the first school was built in like 1804 or
Oh,
something.
yeah. Okay. All right, Fair, here we go. Here's the Universalist Church. Now we're on the other side of Main Street now. We're going to go down this side of Main Street.
That building needs a steeple.
It does. I purposely put that in there thinking that someone might make a good suggestion. You put a steeple on that thing. There's quite a history to this one, and Fair, help me out here, because this is the oldest Universalist church in Maine?
Yeah, the oldest continuously operating,
In Maine?
and I think it's I'm quite sure it's the first Universalist church building
Okay.
in Maine.
Okay.
There may, I think in Gray there was a congregation, but that was founded before this one.
Yeah.
But, no, in New Gloucester, there was one. But they didn't have a building, they met in people's houses.
Yeah.
But this congregation had the first building.
Yeah, for any of you who don't know Fair, she's the pastor here at the Universalist Church. This current building replaced one that was constructed in 1801. And Ezra Fluent Beale, now that's a name, Ezra Fluent Beale, designed the present structure in 1829. And in 1865, Beale raised the entire building and he built a large room underneath, which I guess is where there's this little stage down there and the kitchen down there and a gathering room down there. It was the concert hall, as they called it, in the basement. And it was a very important meeting place for the town until the Opera House was built.
You could say it's where the, after the fire,
Yeah,
that they met in the concert
Yeah,
hall.
yeah.
To plan how they would rebuild.
yeah, yeah. And it has beautiful Tiffany glass stained windows.
Yes.
All the windows are gorgeous in that building. Okay. Does need a steeple, folks. Does need a steeple. Here's the building, here's the house right next to us,
Increase.
And Increase Robinson. Well, Increase Robinson. Federalist style, hip roof, it's a pretty classic looking building there. Built in the early 1800s, it was nearly rebuilt, completely rebuilt by Increase Robinson in 1806. And Robinson was one of Norway's first merchants. And he greatly expanded the house, which I'm guessing he must have pushed the back end of the house back toward the barn. In 1818, from 1832 to 1859, the house was owned by William Clark Whitney, the High Sheriff of Oxford County, and one of the wealthiest men in the region. Put those two together. Whitney was the great-grandfather of Stephen B. Cummings, who bought the house in 1911, and the Cummings family still owns that. Stephen B.'s great-grandson. Robbie?
Yeah.
Great-grandson. And Stephen B. was one of C.B. Cummings' sons. So he was in a woodworking company, a woodworking family.
Well, one thing to say, I've forgotten until just this moment to say about the C.B. Cummings house, the gingerbread house, when it was in its previous location, had the carriage house.
Oh, that's a cool building, yeah.
And I don't know if people know, it had a turntable in the carriage
Yeah.
house.
Carriage house is still down there.
Yeah.
And he had this carriage, and it's because he didn't want to have to back his car up.
That's
So-
the story.
That's the story. We're sticking by it because it's a great story.
He didn't know how to reverse.
Didn't know how to reverse. Yeah. You drive your car in, you just turn on the turntable. Yeah.
And Richard McSherry, who now owns just the
Yeah.
carriage house,
Yeah.
restored the turntable, so it works again.
Cool. It's wonderful. Turn into a merry-go-round or something. That's pretty cool. Yeah. The fact that he restored it.
Yeah.
Okay.
cool.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll come down the street now. We're right here, with this building right here. And this was the Henry Bangs store. Sold groceries, and man, they sold groceries out of that store in some shape or manner over a number of different generations, a number of different families for a long time. Jackson's Market, Aries Subs. Aries was there before the current ownership took over. Aries was there for 25 years or so, or something like that, a very long time. Jackson's Market was there for a very, very long time. So a lot of subsequent owners sold groceries or food in some shape or manner. That's a beautiful building. Done a beautiful job restoring that. Okay. Then we come down to the building right next to that. This is where the co-op is. And this was called the Elm House block, built in 1847. It was one of Norway's most famous hostelries from 1847 to 1916. So it was very well known as a place to stay here in town. After 1916, the post office, a Buick sales room, and law offices occupied the bottom floor, and apartments were on the upper floor, 1916. Post office moved out in 41 because they built their current building in 41. We'll get to that building in a minute. And the lot, as it turns out, is one of the deepest on Main Street, which affords some nice parking opportunities out here. Yeah, there's a fairly famous inn there of some sort.
Was that a car?
Yeah, it was a coin dealership.
Yeah, I don't know.
Buick dealership, is that?
Dodge Plymouth.
Yeah.
Dodge Plymouth.
Charles.
Dodge Plymouth.
Gosh, did they actually have cars right in the building?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The showroom there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember that. I didn't get up on the upper end of town.
No, you didn't.
I was from the lower end of town. I was down in the hood, down at Beale Street. Trucker Street.
There was a lot of things, but Mayfair Furniture was in there for a while.
Yeah, I wish I could remember the car dealership, because I know that was
Charles Bell.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a great house.
Oh, here we go, Charles. Here it is. Yeah. This building, this is a cool building because when it was Longley's, I remember going in there as a kid and just being amazed at all the stuff,
Yes.
all the hardware stuff. I mean, this place was there a long, long time, and it had every possible gasket and fixture from a broken toilet from 60 years ago. I mean, it was amazing. It was just amazing how much inventory they had in here.
That basement was like a big playground for
Oh,
kids.
that's
And you could go down there and there was all this stuff.
Yeah.
You could pick it up and
Just
play
so
with
much-
it.
So much
And
cool
put it
stuff.
back.
And they knew where everything was.
Yes, yes.
If you couldn't find something somewhere else, you always could
Yeah.
find it at Longwood.
That's-
And you know, this was built originally, Charles, correct me if I'm wrong here on some of this, but the note that I had is it was built as a hardware store originally, and it had a windlass put in it to raise and lower heavy things from one floor to the other. Does that sound right?
Yes, yes, you could open up the trap door.
Yeah. It had a crude elevator with a windlass, which is a cranking mechanism. From 1898 to 1938, the building housed the Norway Public Library. Does that sound about right, Ann? Is that-
Yeah.
Yep. In 38, they move out and they move down to the current library. Thomas Higgins started the hardware store, a hardware store in 1844. And I think, was it wooden? The building was wooden before.
Yes, and it was moved.
Oh, it was moved,
It
okay.
moved, actually, if my memory is right, it eventually ended up as the harness shop, and then that burned in the fire of 94.
94?
Yeah.
Ah, so that was down here in the corner. Yeah.
And the harness, there was the second, that was the second move. It was moved down on the end of one of the, either Cottage Street or one of the streets going north.
And the streets
One
along
of
here.
the side streets, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was Cottage Street or Danforth Street, but it was moved down to the end of one of those streets, and then it was moved back onto Main Street and became the wooden building for the harness shop.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's my answer. James Crooker purchased the business in 1864, and he rebuilt, my notes indicated he rebuilt the brick building we see today.
Yeah.
A guy named Crooker.
Yeah, so I think he came in and worked, and then his daughter married, one of his daughters became, who did you say was the first owner?
Higgins.
married
Higgins.
Yes, he
Higgins,
married
yeah.
Higgins' daughter.
Ah,
He came in as a clerk, and then he married Higgins' daughter.
yep.
There you go.
And then LM, Leon Longley, purchased the store from Crooker. And-
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, no, never, they rented it.
Rented it, huh?
Yeah, this is the Higgins Crooker estate.
That's
It became
right.
the hook, it became the Higgins Crooker estate, and the town owned it, and Longley's leased it from the Higgins Crooker
Ah,
estate.
so Longley's didn't own.
They never owned it, they had the business there.
Oh, that's interesting. So the town owns the.
The town owned that property.
Well, there was a trust that owned the property.
Ah,
The town held the trust.
yeah, yeah. That's interesting.
All
There
those
were
years.
3 buildings that were in that trust. The Longley Brick Building, the Art Store, not the West, but the
100 Acre Wood.
Traficante's
Yeah,
Art
yeah,
Store,
yeah.
and the house at 20 Deering Street that was the home of James Crooker.
Oh, so that was the house, the first house in.
The White House.
Yeah. Oh, the big white one?
Yeah.
Oh, the big fancy, big nice white one?
Yeah.
Ah.
20 Deering
Oh,
Street.
yeah.
And those 3 properties were held in a trust
Yep.
that Dick Dennison oversaw.
Yes. But I tell you, it was a pretty remarkable hardware store. It was just, it was incredible. Just as a variety of stuff they had there, and like somebody said, Brian said, they could find, somebody could always walk down into the basement and come back with
Yeah.
a gasket for a 60-year-old leaking toilet. It's amazing. All right, here's the Weary Club. Any Weary Clubbers in here? Oh, yes, yeah, we got some Weary Clubbers in here. All right, so you're gonna give us the secret handshake. All right, I got a real kick out of reading about the Weary Club. It said there was a byline or tagline that said, makers and dealers in cedar shavings, social gossip, political wisdom, and Yankee wisdom. This was actually constructed apparently from wood salvaged from the Beals Tavern in 1927. Does that sound right? That's what I think.
Beals Tavern didn't come down until like 1960.
Yeah. So did part of it come down maybe to salvage some wood out of that?
Could have been behind.
Yeah. Part of Beals, because Beals did come down.
Right,
in the
because that
1960s.
became the Hotel Stone, and that's when it's going down.
Yep. But this is
Very
a,
close before
Yeah,
Stone was
yeah.
taken down.
it's kind of it's a cute little building there. Any other lore? Any other lore or are you sworn to secrecy?
Just that it was moved.
It was moved, yep.
And didn't they have to be a whittler?
They have
I
to,
don't anymore.
well, whittle something that could float. So
That's exactly what I said.
It
The
was like
rumor
a
was,
shaving.
yeah, admission was only given to those who can carve a cedar shaving light enough to float.
It's just basically any shaving.
Yep.
In 2022, the 100th anniversary cookbook was sold at the Arts Festival. But the coffee mugs say established in 1926.
Ah.
And you're saying it was built in 27, so we have 3 anniversaries.
We're also the makers of Tall Tales.
Yeah.
Yes.
Makers of tall tales, yeah. Okay, then we come down to the Beal Walk. This is the building down, there's one building separating that, between that and the Agrins. Used to be Schiavi's for many years. But this was the Beal Walk. Everybody remember the Blue Store? I didn't put the Blue Store in here.
Yes.
I
Yes.
thought there'd be some people in here who didn't know what the Blue Store was, so.
Pike's Men's Store.
Pike's Men's Store. Yep.
Yeah.
Eventually, the roof collapsed on that, and, there was change in ownership. The Lions
Here?
couldn't take care of it. But then there's the Beal Block here. And the Beal Block dates from 1852, designed by Ezra Fluent Beal. Ezra Fluent Beal lived from 1797 to 1871. And as it turned out, he was a very well-known architect, very famous for doing railroad stations throughout the Northeast. Plus, he also designed and constructed Beal's Hotel. Anybody remember Beal's Hotel?
Yes.
Yeah, I had trouble remembering that. I just don't.
It was
I know
huge.
there. It was big, wasn't it? There was a barber shop in it too, wasn't there?
There was a pool room under the
Pool room, yeah.
Footwear store. Yeah, Sue Footwear was down.
Oh, was it?
Great.
Yeah. And that was where the parking lot, empty parking lot is now next to the. George Lafayette Beal, his son, was a brigadier general in the Civil War. And for many, many years, there was a store here called Varenis's.
Yes.
For many years.
Yes, Italian.
1920s to the 1960s. Made great Italian sandwiches.
What was the name of it?
Varenis.
Yeah. Awesome.
They were Greek, weren't they?
Yes.
Making Italian sandwiches.
Go figure.
Well, the son, Constantino Varenis, was the founder.
Yep.
And he was a Greek immigrant.
Yep.
His sons, George and Peter,
Yep.
who we all remember,
Yes.
running the store, they were the ones who wanted to put in the pizza oven and make Italian sandwiches. I think.
It was a big hit.
I think elder Mr. Varenis
Yeah.
frowned upon that.
Yeah.
They made the best pizza in
They
town.
made a good call on that. They were always very busy, certainly on the weekends. Yeah.
That
Okay.
makes sense for a pepperoni pizza.
Yeah.
All right, here's our post office. Post office was built in 40 to 41, and there was actually a building on this site that was a twin to the Danforth building that's right next to it. We'll talk about that in just a second. This was actually a work relief project for the WPA during the Depression era. The lobby originally had 5 bronze grated service windows. You can kind of see those, get a feeling for where those were when you go in. You go in and you look at that, and they've blocked in some of that. You slide your envelopes in there. But I think that probably that's where they were. It was right in that very front-facing thing as you came in the front door. The Howe block, which was here, was built in about 1830. Was on the site where the post office is now, and apparently it was a building that was very similar in look and design to the Danforth building right next door. But that
That's
came
right,
in.
they're almost identical.
Yeah, yeah. But that came down when the post office bought the block for $8,000. Post office. And here's the Danforth building. So apparently there was a building very similar, if not identical to that, where the post office was. And this is the Danforth house. This was built about 1830. It was built for Dr. Asa Danforth, one of Norway's first and most beloved physicians. It served as his home and office for about 60 years. It's one of the few buildings on Main Street that hasn't undergone renovations.
It has undergone renovations,
Yeah.
because my father did them.
Oh, it's inside?
Extensive.
Back in the 1990s.
Yeah. And it's apartments, is it? Is it apartments now?
Oh, it is apartments.
Did the outside change at all?
Oh, no, it was the 1970s, sorry.
Yeah. Did the outside change at all?
They put new windows in
Yeah.
and stuff, but I don't think,
So got the
structurally,
granite,
I don't think there was a lot that changed.
granite lintel is still in there, which is kind of cool. Yeah.
But he spent a lot of time
Did he? Yeah.
renovating.
And here's the building next door. It's the game store now. This was called Fletcher's Candy Shop. This was built in 1894. And I don't know, 1894 building, I don't know if they lost this in the fire or not, but 1894 is the date we had in the literature for this. Designed by James Danforth. And Danforth Avenue runs right along the side there. In the early days, it was a meat store. Fletcher's Confectionery was here for many years, beginning in about 1918. Candy store of some sort.
Yes, he made all his own candy, and he was famous for his candy canes at Christmas time.
Oh, there you
And
go.
we had one of his, a huge candy cane. It's not a cane though, it's like a candy stick, but we've got one out in the display case.
Oh, hey, cool. Now I'm going to jump around a little bit now. I'm going to jump down Main Street to, and I'm going to jump over the Rose School. We already talked about the Rose School. But what's interesting is Charles H. Adams, who designed and I think he built the rectory or the building that's associated with the Congo Church, Congregational Church. He also designed the Norway High School, the wooden Norway High School. So this guy was around. This guy was a fairly well-known builder, and he designed the Congo Church, the Associated House, wooden Norway High School, and the Jones House, which is the last place I'm going to talk about, which is up on Pleasant Street, which is the big, fancy, big, nice building up there. It's called the Jones House. So Charles Adams was quite the builder here right after the fire. Anybody ever been in that building?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's it? Is it like just a house?
It's beautiful. Yeah, Dr. Miller lived there for a while, and then the parsonage used to be on Paris Street. And then when he left, the church bought it. And the Littles lived there forever,
Yeah.
for a long time. And it's bedrooms on the third floor too. It's slightly damaged, but if you want it, it's for sale right now. Yeah. It's not, there's no sign, but it is for sale.
Has it got nice woodwork inside?
Oh, it's beautiful
Yeah,
floors, yeah. Nice, banister, it's some really nice features.
Yeah, probably go back to when the house was first built.
Yeah.
Did a lot of fancy stuff, so we can afford to now. Okay, keep moving along here, we're gonna go to, this house is right up here. This house is right. There it is. There it is. That's the Cummings greenhouse. And I put that one in there just because that's just a cool looking house.
It is.
And it's an easy one to see if you go walking around here. But you notice that like Cummings is, God, they had their fingers in everything. For a spell. It's the only ring of wood, so I guess making houses is probably makes sense, I guess. The architect and builder was John Hazen, same Hazen we were talking about, it was Hazen Avenue's down here. A local newspaper at the time of construction described it as being, in quotes, the Mikado style of architecture. I don't know, that might have been a little dig. That might have been a little dig. It might have been a little too fancy, a little too tripped up back when they first built this thing in 1886. It originally was built as a two-family dwelling for Stephen and Edwin Cummings of the Cummings woodworking family. And it's the people who bought this in recent years, it's a beautiful job of painting, and I don't know what's like inside.
It's a triplex now.
What's that?
It's a triplex now.
Is it? Yeah. Just a beautiful job of just putting paint outside, making everything look nice. I got to talk about the Grange because a lot of activities go on in the Grange, notably UMPA, the local performing arts society, puts on plays here a couple times or more a year. This was a pretty fancy Grange hall, as Grange halls go. Colonial Revival. It is one of the most elaborate Grange halls in Oxford County. There's a dining room, kitchen facilities down there, stage facility on the second floor. And it's worth going and having a look. It's worth poking your head in there too. They got some wonderful old photographs in there for anybody who hasn't been in there. Some wonderful photographs of people, former Grange members. Anybody ever heard of Grange or parents in the Grange? Yeah.
Grandfather,
great-grandfather. I mean, Granges used to be a big deal, right?
Yeah, but yeah, one of my relatives was the first master.
Yeah. So that building is worth taking a look at. So you can go inside and have a look at it again. And this is the last one. This is the William Frost Jones house up on Pleasant Street. That's just a beautiful house. Anybody been in this, going to the restaurant or whatever?
The remodeled it really nice. They did an incredible job. The people just
it's just beautiful. This was under the direction, built under the direction of Charles Adams, who designed the parsonage for the church down here in the high school. Colonial Revival. It was built for Mrs. Kate Frost Jones, a Norway resident, or Norway native, who married Otis Norcross Jones, a Boston merchant. Probably did pretty well. Mrs. Jones gave the house to her son, William Frost Jones, and his wife. And William Frost Jones, a lawyer, later became superintendent of Norway schools and the judge of the Norway Municipal Court. And it's just a gorgeous house. And you can't see the barn to the side. The barn is part of that as well. Beautiful lawn, it's just a lovely. All right, there are tons of buildings here, and I had to stop at some point because it was really interesting. There are just so many buildings we didn't even touch on. It kind of shows the pride that people took in building these buildings. And I got to believe too that some of these buildings represent some affluence, some sense of financial success to be able to build these kind of buildings and to hire the architects that were hired, because some of these architects came from pretty prestigious architectural firms coming out here and building these places. This would cost something, certainly. So anyway, hope you enjoyed it and take advantage of all